At 68 years old, I thought the hardest battles of my life were behind me. My name is Carmen, and I'm speaking to you from my little apartment here in Bogota, where I've lived alone since my beloved husband, Miguel, passed away 5 years ago. You know, when you reach my age, you think you've seen everything life can throw at you. You've raised your children, buried your parents, survived poverty, heartbreak, and somehow found peace in the quiet rhythm of your golden years. I had my morning coffee ritual, my evening novenas, and my weekly calls with my daughter Maria. But let me tell you something, my friends. Life doesn't ask permission before it destroys everything you thought you knew. It was March 15th, 2024, at exactly 2:17 in the morning. I know because I stared at that digital clock for what felt like hours after that phone call. The hospital's number flashed on my old Nokia, and my heart immediately started racing. You know that feeling, don't you? When the phone rings at an ungodly hour, and your soul knows something terrible has happened. Señora Rodriguez, this is Dr. Hernandez from Hospital San Jose. Your daughter Maria has been admitted in critical condition. You need to come immediately. The world stopped. Just stopped. My hand started shaking so violently I could barely hold the phone. What happened to my daughter? I whispered, but my voice came out like a broken prayer. Ma'am, I can't discuss details over the phone. Please come as soon as possible. I want you to understand something. When you're a mother, it doesn't matter if your child is 5 or 35. When they're hurt, every cell in your body screams. I threw on the first clothes I could find. My old blue sweater that still smelled like Miguel's cologne, and my worn-out sneakers. The streets of Bogota at 2 a.m. are haunting. Empty buses, scattered streetlights, and me, an old woman running through the darkness, praying every prayer I'd ever learned. Dios mío, please protect my Maria. Please don't take her from me too. When I arrived at the hospital, the fluorescent lights felt like knives cutting through my eyes. The smell of disinfectant mixed with fear. A young nurse guided me through endless corridors, and with each step, my legs felt heavier. Then I saw her. My beautiful Maria, my youngest daughter lying unconscious in that hospital bed. But this wasn't my Maria. This was a broken doll with purple bruises covering her face, her arms swollen, her lips cracked and bleeding. Someone had turned my vibrant, laughing daughter into a ghost. I collapsed into the chair beside her bed and took her cold hand in mine. That's when I noticed them. The finger-shaped bruises around her throat. Someone had tried to strangle my baby. Who did this to you, mi amor? I whispered, stroking her matted hair. Who could do this to someone so pure, so good? Dr. Hernandez appeared behind me, a tired-looking man in his 50s with kind eyes that had seen too much suffering. Señora Rodriguez, your daughter was brought in by her husband. He said he found her collapsed at home. Roberto, my son-in-law of 3 years, the man I had welcomed into our family, the man I had hugged at Christmas dinner just 3 months ago, the man who called me Mama Carmen and brought me flowers on Mother's Day. But as I sat there looking at my destroyed daughter, something deep in my gut started screaming that this wasn't an accident. This wasn't some random tragedy. This was evil wearing a familiar face. The doctor continued, We're running tests, but her condition is very serious. She has internal bleeding, possible poisoning, and severe trauma. The next 24 hours are critical. Poisoning. That word hit me like lightning. Who gets poisoned by accident? I spent that entire night holding Maria's hand, praying the rosary my own mother had taught me 70 years ago in our little village outside Medellin. Dios te salve Maria, llena eres de gracia. The same prayer I'd whispered when she was born, when she took her first steps, when she graduated university. But somewhere between the third and fourth rosary, as the sun started creeping through the hospital window, I made a promise that would change everything. If someone had hurt my daughter intentionally, if someone had poisoned her and beaten her and left her to die, I would make sure they never hurt another woman again. At 68, I was about to learn that a mother's love can be the most dangerous force on earth. Sometimes we see everything but understand nothing. That's what haunts me the most about those months before the hospital. All the signs were there, screaming at me. but I was too blind to see them. I sat by Maria's bedside that entire first day, watching the machines beep and flash, keeping my daughter alive. Her face was so swollen I could barely recognize the little girl who used to braid my hair on Sunday mornings. The nurses came and went, checking her IV, adjusting her oxygen mask. But I never left that chair. That's when the memories started flooding back, like a movie playing in reverse, showing me every moment I should have paid attention to. 3 months ago, at Christmas dinner, Maria barely touched her favorite dish, my grandmother's sancocho that she'd been begging me to make since she was 10 years old. She sat at my table, thin as a pencil, wearing a long-sleeved dress in the middle of Bogota's summer heat. When I asked if she was feeling sick, Roberto answered for her. "She's been dieting, Mama Carmen. Women, you know how they are about their weight." But I knew my daughter. Maria never cared about diets. She was the girl who used to sneak extra arepa con queso when she thought I wasn't looking. She was the young woman who celebrated every birthday with double chocolate cake and 0 regrets. Why didn't I question it then? Why didn't I pull her aside and ask her what was really wrong? 2 months ago, when she missed our weekly coffee date at Café Juan Valdez, something we'd done religiously for 15 years, she called me crying, saying she had fallen down the stairs and couldn't walk properly. Roberto was so concerned, she said, taking such good care of her. "Mommy, you don't need to come over. Roberto is here. He's making me soup and everything." I should have gone anyway. I should have ignored her protests and shown up at her door. But I didn't want to be the interfering mother-in-law. I wanted to respect her marriage, her choices, her space. God forgive me for respecting the wrong things. 1 month ago, when I called her and she whispered the entire conversation, when I asked why she was speaking so quietly, she said Roberto was sleeping and she didn't want to wake him. It was 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. "Is everything okay, mi amor? You sound different." "I'm fine, Mommy. Just tired. Roberto works so hard, you know. I try not to disturb him when he's resting. Since when did my bold, loud, laughing daughter become a mouse in her own home?" The phone calls became shorter. Her visits became rarer. Every excuse was about Roberto. Roberto needed her. Roberto was stressed. Roberto didn't like when she was away too long. I remember thinking he was just possessive because he loved her so much. Some men are like that, I told myself. They want to keep their wives close. How naive can an old woman be? Last month, I ran into them at the Supermercado San Andresito. Maria was wearing sunglasses indoors, long sleeves again, and she jumped like a scared cat when I touched her shoulder to say hello. "Mommy, what are you doing here?" It was her neighborhood grocery store. Why was she surprised to see me there? Roberto smiled that charming smile of his. "Mama Carmen, how wonderful to see you. Maria was just telling me how much she misses you." But Maria said nothing. She stood behind him like a shadow, nodding when he spoke, agreeing with everything he said. Where was the woman who used to argue with me about politics, who used to defend her opinions with passion and fire? When I hugged her goodbye, I felt how thin she'd become. Her ribs were sharp against my arms. Her hair had lost its shine. Even her perfume was different. Or maybe she wasn't wearing any at all. "You're getting too skinny, mi amor. Come to my house this weekend, and I'll make your favorite lentil soup." She looked at Roberto before answering. Actually looked at him for permission to visit her own mother. "We'll see, Mommy. Roberto and I have plans. Roberto and I. Roberto needs. Roberto wants. Roberto decides." When did my independent daughter become someone who needed permission to breathe? As I sat there in that hospital room, holding her bruised hand, I realized that Maria had been trying to tell me something for months. Not with words. She couldn't use words anymore. But with her silence, with her fear, with the way she flinched when anyone moved too quickly. She was screaming for help in a language I didn't understand until it was almost too late. The worst part? I wasn't the only one who failed her. Her friends stopped calling because Roberto didn't like them. Her cousin Isabella stopped inviting her to family gatherings because Roberto always found reasons why she couldn't go. Even her job. She quit her job at the bank because Roberto said a wife should focus on her home. We all watched my vibrant daughter disappear piece by piece, and we called it love. That afternoon, while Maria slept under heavy sedation, I finally asked Dr. Hernandez the question that was eating my soul. "Doctor, these injuries, could they be from a fall?" He looked at me with those tired, honest eyes. "Senora Rodriguez, in 30 years of emergency medicine, I've learned to recognize certain patterns. These are not accident injuries." My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces, but for the first time in months, everything made sense. Someone had been slowly killing my daughter, and I had been helping them by staying silent. Evil doesn't always come with horns and a pitchfork. Sometimes it comes with a smile, brings you Mother's Day flowers, and calls you Mama. On the second day at Maria's bedside, Dr. Hernandez returned with test results that would change everything. I could see the gravity in his tired eyes before he even spoke. "Senora Rodriguez, Maria's blood work shows high levels of warfarin, rat poison. This wasn't accidental. The concentration indicates deliberate, repeated exposure over weeks, possibly months." The words hit me like lightning. Rat poison. Someone had been feeding my daughter poison like she was vermin to be exterminated. "Doctor, that's impossible. Who would—" "The levels are consistent with small doses mixed into food or beverages. It causes internal bleeding, weakness, the symptoms you described seeing in recent months." I felt my world tilting. All those times I worried she looked pale, tired, sick. Someone was slowly killing her. While I was making her favorite soup and worrying about her losing weight, someone was poisoning her daily. "This is attempted murder, isn't it?" Dr. Hernandez nodded solemnly. "I'm legally required to contact the authorities." I walked back to Maria's room in a daze, and there he was, Roberto, sitting beside her bed, like the devoted husband, stroking her hair with the same hands that had been poisoning her. "Mama Carmen, gracias a Dios you're here. I haven't left her side since yesterday. The doctors, they're not telling me everything." Looking at him now, really looking, I saw what I'd missed before, the way his concern seemed performed, how his eyes never quite met mine when he spoke about finding her collapsed. "Roberto, you found her in the kitchen, correct? See, she was making her evening tea. You know how she loves that chamomile tea before bed. Tea, perfect for hiding bitter tastes. Did you make the tea for her?" His pause was barely noticeable, but I caught it. No. She always insists on making it herself. Very particular about the temperature, you know." But I remembered Christmas dinner. Roberto proudly serving Maria her tea, saying he'd learned exactly how she liked it, saying he wanted to take care of all her needs now that they were married. That night, alone with my unconscious daughter, I held her swollen hand and whispered, "Mi amor, who did this to you? Was it him? Was it Roberto?" Of course, she couldn't answer, but something in my mother's heart already knew. I started remembering things differently. How Roberto always insisted on grocery shopping alone after they married. "I want to spoil my wife," he'd said. How he'd started cooking more often. "Maria works so hard. She deserves to be pampered." How many meals had he prepared for her? How many cups of coffee, glasses of water, evening teas? My phone buzzed. A text from Roberto. "Mama Carmen, I know this is difficult. Maria has been struggling with depression. Sometimes when people feel hopeless, they make desperate choices. I pray you can understand." He was already planting seeds, suggesting suicide, preparing his story. I screenshot that message. Something told me I would need every piece of evidence I could gather. The next morning brought Detective Morales, a woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many broken families. She interviewed me gently but thoroughly. "In cases like this, there's usually a pattern. Has your son-in-law shown any controlling behavior?" I told her about the isolation, the way Maria had become a shadow of herself, the fear I'd started noticing in my daughter's eyes. "Señora, abusers often test boundaries gradually. If Roberto was poisoning Maria, this probably wasn't his first form of abuse. You think he hurt her in other ways? The bruises on her neck suggest strangulation attempts. The defensive wounds on her arms indicate she tried to fight back. This poisoning might have been his way of weakening her so she couldn't resist. The image made me physically sick. My strong, independent daughter, slowly weakened by poison until she couldn't even defend herself from his hands around her throat. Detective, what if she had died? What would have happened? If the poison had succeeded, it would have looked like suicide or a tragic accident. Roberto would have been the grieving widower, free to inherit everything and move on to his next victim. Next victim. The words sent ice through my veins. That evening I sat praying the rosary, but my prayers had changed. Instead of just asking God to heal Maria, I was asking for strength to face whatever I might discover about Roberto, and I was asking for forgiveness in advance for what I might have to do to protect other women from suffering my daughter's fate, because I knew, deep in my bones, that Detective Morales was right. Men like Roberto don't stop with one victim. They perfect their methods and find new targets. As I watched Maria's chest rise and fall with the help of machines, I made a vow that would change the rest of my life. Roberto had made one critical mistake. He hadn't finished the job. Maria was still alive, which meant she could recover. She could testify. She could help me stop him. But first, I needed proof. I needed to get inside their house and find the evidence that would put this monster away forever. Tomorrow, while Roberto played the grieving husband at the hospital, this 68-year-old grandmother was going to become a detective. I raised my daughter to see good in everyone. It nearly killed her. The next morning, I watched Roberto leave for work from the hospital parking lot. He kissed Maria's forehead so tenderly, whispered something in her ear, and told the nurses he'd be back by lunch. The perfect husband. But I knew where he was really going, and I knew what I had to do. Maria had given me a spare key to their house months ago, back when she was still my daughter and not his prisoner. I never imagined I'd use it like this, sneaking into her home like a thief, searching for evidence that the man she married was trying to kill her. The house felt different now, cold, empty of the warmth that used to fill it when Maria lived there freely. I stood in their kitchen, and my hands started shaking. This was where it happened, where he mixed poison into her food, her drinks, slowly weakening her until she could barely fight back. I opened the refrigerator first. Everything looked normal. Milk, eggs, leftover sancocho. But then I noticed something strange. There were 2 containers of everything. 2 cartons of milk, 2 packages of cheese, 2 bottles of juice. Why would 2 people need duplicate groceries? I checked the expiration dates. One set was fresh, bought recently. The other set was older, hidden behind the fresh items. I opened the older milk carton and smelled it. Something was wrong. A bitter chemical smell underneath the sour milk odor. My heart pounded as I searched the kitchen cabinets. Behind the cleaning supplies, pushed way back where Maria would never look, I found it. A small box of rat poison. Decon, the same brand Dr. Hernandez had mentioned. But what made my blood run cold was seeing how much was missing from the container. At least half the box was gone. I took photos with my phone, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold it steady. Then I kept searching. In Roberto's desk drawer, I found insurance papers. Life insurance policies on Maria, 3 different ones, all taken out in the past 6 months. The total was over $200,000. 200,000 reasons to murder my daughter, but the worst discovery was still coming. Hidden behind his work files, I found a folder marked personal. Inside were printed emails, correspondence with other women, dating profiles, messages that made me sick to read. Hi, beautiful. I'm recently widowed and looking for someone special to share my life with. Widowed. He was already planning to be a widower. There were conversations with at least 5 different women, all around Maria's age, all single, all looking for love. He was shopping for his next victim while slowly killing his current wife. One email thread was with a woman named Sofia from Medellin. She'd sent him photos, told him about her job at the bank, mentioned that she lived alone and had some savings put aside for her future. Perfect target, just like Maria had been. But then I found something that nearly broke me completely. A notebook, written in Roberto's handwriting, with detailed observations about Maria's daily routine. Maria drinks coffee at 7 a.m., 2 small doses weekly. Evening tea at 9 p.m., 3 doses weekly, stronger concentration. Lunch smoothies on weekends, opportunity for larger doses. Weight loss progressing well, 8 kilos in 2 months. Weakness increasing, falls more often, easier to control. He was documenting her slow death like a science experiment. The final entry, dated just 1 week ago, made me gasp out loud. Maria becoming suspicious about tea taste. Need to accelerate timeline. Final dose this weekend. Make it look like suicide attempt. Depression story already established with neighbors and her mother. This monster had been planning my daughter's murder down to the smallest detail. And he'd been preparing me to believe she killed herself. I photographed everything, my tears making it hard to see the phone screen clearly. Then I heard a car door slam outside. Roberto was back early. I quickly closed the drawers, grabbed the evidence photos, and slipped out the back door just as I heard his key in the front lock. My heart was beating so hard I thought it might give out right there in Maria's garden. I sat in my car 2 blocks away, shaking, trying to process what I'd discovered. This wasn't just about Roberto and Maria anymore. There were other women in danger. Sofia in Medellin had no idea she was corresponding with a predator who saw her as his next payday. When I returned to the hospital, Roberto was already there, holding Maria's hand and talking softly to her unconscious form. "How is she today?" I asked, studying his face. "The same, Mama Carmen. But I have faith she'll recover. We have so many plans together. So much life ahead of us." Plans. The only plan he had was to collect her insurance money and move on to Sofia. "Roberto, have you eaten today? You look tired." "I'm fine. I just want to focus on Maria right now. She's all that matters to me." I watched him stroke her hair, the same hands that had measured poison into her food, the same hands that had choked her when the poison wasn't working fast enough. "You know, Roberto, I've been thinking, when Maria recovers, maybe you two should take a vacation. Get away from all this stress." His eyes flashed something cold for just a moment. "Well, let's see how she recovers first, Mama. The doctors say the damage might be permanent." Permanent. He was hoping the damage would be permanent. Hoping my daughter would never be strong enough to tell anyone what he'd done to her. That night I called Detective Morales and told her everything I'd found. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Senora Rodriguez, what you've discovered is exactly what we needed. But I have to warn you, Roberto is much more dangerous than we initially thought. If he realizes you know the truth, he won't hurt me. I'm just the old mother-in-law. Carmen, men who are capable of slowly poisoning their wives are capable of anything. You need to be very careful." But I wasn't scared anymore. I was angry. Roberto had underestimated me just like he'd underestimated Maria. He saw us as weak women, easy targets, disposable. He was about to learn that this old Colombian grandmother had some fight left in her yet. Sometimes our greatest strength comes from our deepest pain. Detective Morales met me at the police station the next morning. Her office was small, cramped with files of cases like Maria's. Women who trusted the wrong man. Families destroyed by violence disguised as love. "Senora Rodriguez, the evidence you gathered is substantial, but we need more to build a solid case against Roberto." I spread the photos across her desk. The poison, the insurance policies, the notebook documenting my daughter's slow murder, the emails with other women. "What more do you need? This monster planned everything." "I believe you completely, but Roberto's lawyer will argue the poison could have been planted. The notebook could be fabricated. We need witnesses, other victims, a pattern we can prove in court." Detective Morales pulled out a thick file. "I've been investigating Roberto since yesterday. What I found will shock you." She opened the file and showed me photographs of 3 other women. Young, beautiful, trusting faces smiling at the camera. These women all dated Roberto in the past 5 years. This is Ana Gutierrez from Cali. She filed a police report for domestic violence, but dropped the charges when Roberto convinced her it was just a misunderstanding. This is Sofia Herrera from Medellin. She broke up with Roberto after 6 months because she kept getting mysteriously sick whenever she ate meals he prepared. My blood ran cold. And the third woman, Patricia Vasquez from Cartagena. She died 2 years ago. The room started spinning. Died how? Officially, suicide by poisoning. She left a note saying she was depressed and couldn't go on. But her family never believed it. Patricia was planning her wedding, had just gotten promoted at work, was the happiest she'd ever been. To Roberto, they had dated for 8 months. He was the one who found her body, called the ambulance, played the devastated boyfriend. He even spoke at her funeral about how much he loved her. I stared at Patricia's photo. She looked so much like Maria. Dark hair, kind eyes, trusting smile. Roberto had a type. Detective, this man is a serial killer. I believe so. But Patricia's case was closed as suicide. Her family hired a private investigator, but without new evidence, there's nothing we can do to reopen it. I thought about Patricia's parents, somewhere in Cartagena, still mourning their daughter and knowing in their hearts that something wasn't right about her death. What about Ana and Sofia? Have you contacted them? I tried calling Ana yesterday. She hung up as soon as I mentioned Roberto's name. Sofia moved to Spain after their relationship ended. She told her sister she needed to get as far away from Colombia as possible. They're afraid of him, terrified, but they might be willing to help if they knew Roberto was finally going to face justice. Detective Morales leaned forward. Carmen, I need you to understand something. Taking down Roberto won't be easy. He's smart, manipulative, and he has money for good lawyers. But if we can get Ana and Sofia to testify, combined with what happened to Maria and the evidence you found, we can stop him from killing again. Exactly. I thought about all the women Roberto was already courting online, planning their deaths while pretending to plan their futures. How many Sofias and Patricias and Marias would die if we didn't act? Detective, I want to contact Ana and Sofia myself. Carmen, that could be dangerous. If Roberto finds out, I'm 68 years old. What's he going to do? Poison my coffee? I've lived through civil war, poverty, burying my husband, and now watching my daughter fight for her life. I'm not afraid of Roberto Mendoza. That afternoon, I called Ana Gutierrez in Cali. It took 3 attempts before she answered. Ana, my name is Carmen Rodriguez. My daughter Maria is married to Roberto Mendoza. Silence. Then, Señora, I can't talk about Roberto, I'm sorry. Ana, he poisoned my daughter. She's in the hospital fighting for her life. I heard her sharp intake of breath. What did you say? Roberto has been slowly poisoning Maria for months. The police found rat poison in his house, insurance policies, a notebook where he documented killing her. Ana, I know he hurt you too. She started crying. Señora, no one believed me. Everyone thought I was crazy, jealous, making up stories because he broke up with me. I believe you, mi niña. Tell me what happened. Through tears, Ana told me everything. How Roberto isolated her from friends and family. How he controlled every aspect of her life. How she started getting sick whenever she ate food he prepared. How he choked her during arguments, then apologized with flowers and promises to change. The last time, he almost killed me. I ended up in the emergency room and the doctor said I had signs of poisoning. But Roberto convinced everyone I was trying to hurt myself for attention. Ana, he's done this before. There was another woman, Patricia, who died. And there are more women he's targeting right now. Patricia, I remember her. Roberto mentioned an ex-girlfriend who committed suicide. He said it taught him how precious life was. The monster had used Patricia's death as a way to seem sensitive and caring to his next victim. Ana, will you help us stop him? Will you testify about what he did to you? She was quiet for a long time. Then, Señora Carmen, I've been having nightmares about Roberto for 3 years. I moved cities, changed jobs, even changed my name because I was so afraid he'd find me again. I understand, mi amor. But think about the next woman. Think about my Maria, lying in that hospital bed because no one stopped him before. If I testify, will you be there with me? Every step of the way. I promise you we'll face this devil together. That evening, I also reached Sofia in Madrid. Her story was heartbreakingly similar. The isolation, the mysterious illnesses, the fear that something was terribly wrong but not being able to prove it. Senora Carmen, I ran away to Spain because I knew Roberto was going to kill me. I could feel it, but everyone thought I was being dramatic. You trusted your instincts and they saved your life. Your daughter, is she going to be okay? I don't know yet, but with your help, we can make sure Roberto never hurts another woman. Sofia agreed to return to Colombia to testify. Ana agreed to come to Bogotá. 3 women, 3 generations, united by one monster's cruelty. Detective Morales was amazed when I called her that night. Carmen, in 20 years of police work, I've never seen victims willing to come forward like this. They must really trust you. They trust that I won't let Roberto escape justice, and I won't. As I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't felt since this nightmare began. Hope. Roberto thought he was so clever, so careful, so untouchable, but he'd made one fatal error. He'd underestimated the power of women who refused to stay silent. I learned that courage is contagious. 3 days later, I stood in the community center of San Rafael Parish, waiting for Ana and Sofia to arrive. My hands were shaking as I arranged the chairs in a circle, the same way my mother used to set up for our neighborhood prayer meetings back in Medellin. But this wasn't a prayer meeting. This was a war council. Ana arrived first, carrying a small suitcase and looking like a frightened bird. She was thinner than in her photos, with deep circles under her eyes that spoke of years of sleepless nights. Senora Carmen? I opened my arms, and she fell into them like a lost child. Ay, mi niña, thank you for being so brave. I almost didn't come. This morning I packed and unpacked 3 times. I kept thinking, what if Roberto finds out I'm here? He won't hurt you anymore. I promise you that. Sofia arrived an hour later, having flown overnight from Madrid. Despite living in Spain, she still dressed like a Colombian woman. Bright colors, gold jewelry, her grandmother's rosary around her neck. When the 3 of us sat down together, something powerful happened. The shame and fear that had isolated us began to dissolve. Ana spoke first. I've never told anyone the whole truth about what Roberto did to me. You're safe here, I assured her. We're going to listen to everything. She took a shaky breath. It started so beautiful. Roberto was everything I thought I wanted. Handsome, charming, successful. He brought flowers to my office, wrote me love letters, called me his princesa. Sofia nodded. Same with me. He made me feel like the most special woman in the world. But then, Ana continued, little by little, he started cutting me off from everyone. My friends were jealous of our love. My family didn't understand our relationship. My job was stressing me too much. I thought about Maria, how she'd gradually stopped calling her cousins, stopped going out with her friends from university. Within 6 months, Roberto was my whole world. And that's when the real Roberto appeared. Ana pulled up her sleeve, showing us scars on her arm. These are from when he pushed me through a glass door. He said it was my fault for making him angry by talking to a male co-worker. Sofia gasped. He gave me scars too. She showed us a faded mark on her collarbone. From a broken bottle. He threw it at me because I smiled at the waiter when we went to dinner. But the worst part, Ana whispered, was the poisoning. You're sure he was poisoning you? I started getting sick every time I ate meals he prepared. Nausea, dizziness, stomach pain. But only when he cooked. I thought maybe he was just a bad cook. But then I found the rat poison hidden in his kitchen. Sofia's eyes widened. The same thing happened to me. I kept getting sick and Roberto would say, poor baby, you must have a weak stomach. Let me take care of you. He was testing, I realized, seeing how much poison you could handle, learning the right dosage to kill without making it obvious. Ana nodded. The last time I ate his food, I ended up in the hospital. The doctor said I had signs of poisoning, but Roberto convinced everyone I was trying to hurt myself. How did you finally escape? My sister Isabella. She didn't trust Roberto from the beginning. When I ended up in the hospital, she literally kidnapped me, drove to Cali, packed my things while Roberto was at work and took me to her house. Isabella saved your life. She did. But I was so brainwashed. I was angry at her for months. I thought she'd ruined my chance at happiness. Sofia shared her story next. I escaped because my abuela. You know how abuelas are. They can smell evil from miles away. We all laughed despite the pain. Colombian grandmothers have supernatural intuition. Abuela kept saying, "Mija, that man has ojos del diablo, devil's eyes." I thought she was being old-fashioned, but when I started getting sick, your grandmother convinced you to leave. Not convinced, demanded. She bought my ticket to Madrid and said, "You're going to stay with your cousin until your head clears." I fought her, but Abuela doesn't take no for an answer. She saved your life too. As we shared our stories, something miraculous happened. The shame started lifting. The guilt began dissolving. We realized none of us were stupid, weak, or deserving of abuse. We were intelligent women who had been systematically manipulated by a professional predator. "Ladies," I said, "Roberto made one critical mistake with each of us." "What's that?" "He let us live, and now we're going to make sure he can never hurt another woman." Anna looked terrified. "But what if he comes after us? What if he tries to—" "Then he'll have to deal with all of us," Sophia interrupted. "And I didn't survive 3 years of nightmares to back down now." I pulled out the photos I'd taken from Roberto's house, the insurance policies, the notebook, the correspondence with other potential victims. "This is what he's planning for my Maria. And look at these emails with other women. He's already shopping for his next victim." Sophia studied the emails. "This woman here, Carmen from Barranquilla. I know her. She's a friend of my cousin. She has no idea what she's getting into." Then we warn her. We warn all of them. That afternoon, we created our plan. Anna would testify about the physical abuse and attempted poisoning. Sophia would return to Colombia permanently to help build the case. I would coordinate with Detective Morales and provide the evidence from Maria's house. But most importantly, we would find every woman Roberto was currently targeting and warn them. "He thinks women are disposable," I said as we prepared to leave. "He thinks we're weak, silent, isolated." Anna stood straighter. "But we're not isolated anymore." Sophia smiled for the first time since arriving. "We're not silent either." As we hugged goodbye, I felt the presence of all the women Roberto had hurt. Maria fighting for her life, Patricia who didn't survive, and countless others who suffered in silence. But I also felt the strength of the women who refused to stay quiet. Anna with her scars and determination. Sophia with her courage to cross an ocean for justice. Detective Morales working tirelessly to build our case. And me, a 68-year-old grandmother who had found her purpose in the fight for justice. Roberto had created his own army of enemies, and we were about to show him what happens when women unite against a common threat. The hunter was about to become the hunted. At 68, I discovered I was braver than I ever imagined. It was a Tuesday morning when Detective Morales called with the news I'd been praying for. "Carmen, we have enough evidence. We're going to arrest Roberto today." My hands started shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. After weeks of investigating, gathering testimonies, and building our case, the moment had finally arrived. "Where will you arrest him?" "At his workplace. It's better to take him in a public place where he can't claim harassment or plant evidence. Can you be at the station by 3 o'clock? I have been waiting my entire life for this day without knowing it." Roberto worked at a construction company in the industrial district of Bogota. I positioned myself across the street, behind a food cart selling empanadas, where I could see everything but stay hidden. At exactly 2:30 p.m., 3 police cars pulled up to the building. Detective Morales and 5 officers walked inside with purpose. I checked my watch and started praying. "Dios mío, let this work. Let him pay for what he did to my daughter, to Anna, to Sophia, to Patricia." 20 minutes later, they emerged with Roberto in handcuffs. I will never forget that moment as long as I live. Roberto, who had seemed so powerful, so untouchable, looking small and scared between 2 police officers, his expensive suit wrinkled, his confident smile replaced by panic. He was scanning the crowd, probably looking for escape routes or sympathetic faces. That's when his eyes found mine. The recognition hit him like a physical blow. Roberto's face went pale as he realized that the harmless old mother-in-law had been the one building the case against him. I stepped out from behind the food cart and walked closer. Close enough for him to see my face clearly. Close enough for him to understand that his victim's mother was watching his downfall. "Mama Carmen," he called out, his voice cracking. "What are you doing here? There's been some mistake." I said nothing. I just stared at him with all the fury of a mother whose daughter had been slowly murdered by the man she trusted. "Carmen, please, tell them this is wrong. Maria was depressed. She tried to hurt herself." Still I remained silent, but my eyes spoke volumes. They said, "I know what you are. I know what you did, and I'm the one who stopped you." Roberto's lawyer appeared, a slick man in an expensive suit who immediately started demanding answers. But Detective Morales was prepared. "Roberto Mendoza, you're under arrest for attempted murder, domestic violence, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder." As they put him in the police car, Roberto looked at me one last time. The charming mask had completely fallen away. What I saw was pure evil, frustrated that it had been caught. "This isn't over, vieja," he hissed through the car window. But it was over, and he knew it. I watched the police car drive away, taking with it the monster who had nearly destroyed my family. My legs felt weak, but my heart felt stronger than it had in months. The empanada vendor, an elderly woman who had been watching the drama unfold, offered me a chair. "Está bien, señora. You look like you've seen a ghost." "Not a ghost," I replied. "Justice." I called Ana immediately. She was at work in Cali, and when I told her Roberto had been arrested, she started crying so hard she couldn't speak. "Ana, mi amor, he can't hurt you anymore. He can't hurt any of us anymore. Señora Carmen, I never thought this day would come. I thought he was untouchable. Evil men count on good women staying silent, but we didn't stay silent." Next I called Sofia in Madrid. It was evening there, and she was having dinner with her cousin. "Sofia, they arrested Roberto an hour ago." She screamed so loudly that her cousin thought something terrible had happened. Then she started laughing and crying at the same time. "I'm coming home tomorrow," she said. "I want to be there for the trial. I want to look him in the eyes and tell the world what he did to me." That evening I sat beside Maria's hospital bed and held her hand. She was still unconscious, but the doctors said her vital signs were improving daily. "Mi amor, Roberto will never hurt you again. Mama took care of it." I told her about Ana and Sofia, about Detective Morales, about how many people had come together to seek justice for her. "You're going to recover, and you're going to help us make sure Roberto spends the rest of his life in prison where he belongs." For the first time in weeks, I saw Maria's eyelids flutter. The doctors had said she might be able to hear us even while unconscious. "That's right, mi niña, fight. Come back to us, we have work to do." The next morning, the newspapers covered Roberto's arrest. Construction manager arrested for attempted murder of wife. Serial abuser finally captured. Domestic violence ring exposed. But the headline that made me proudest was in El Tiempo. 68-year-old grandmother leads investigation that captures attempted killer. My phone started ringing with reporters wanting interviews, but I only agreed to speak with female journalists who understood the importance of the story. "Señora Rodriguez, what made you pursue this investigation when the police initially seemed hesitant? A mother's love doesn't have an expiration date. When someone hurts your child, you don't just sit quietly and pray. You act. What do you want other families to learn from your experience? Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong in your family, investigate. Ask questions. Don't be the polite mother-in-law who minds her own business while her daughter is being murdered. What's next for you?" "Next, I help Ana and Sofia heal. I help Maria recover. And I make sure Roberto's trial sends a message to every man who thinks he can abuse women without consequences." That afternoon, Detective Morales came to the hospital with updates. Roberto had been denied bail due to flight risk and the severity of charges. His lawyer was already trying to negotiate a plea deal. "Carmen, what you did was extraordinary. In 30 years of police work, I've never seen a family member gather evidence this thoroughly. I had good teachers. Ana and Sofia showed me that victims can become warriors. There's something else. We found Roberto's computer and phone records. He was actively communicating with 12 different women, planning which one to target next. 12 women who would have become victims if we hadn't stopped him. We're contacting all of them to let them know they're safe. As Detective Morales left, I realized something profound had happened. I had spent 68 years being a wife, mother, grandmother, always caring for others, always putting family first. But I had never been a protector, a fighter, a force for justice. Roberto had awakened something in me I never knew existed. And now that it was awake, it wasn't going back to sleep. Roberto is arrested at his workplace in front of colleagues. Carmen watches from across the street, feeling God's justice being served. She describes the moment Maria woke up and learned her mother had saved her and other women from this monster. 5 days after Roberto's arrest, I was reading the Bible to Maria when her fingers moved in my hand. Not the unconscious reflexes the doctors had mentioned, but deliberate, purposeful movement. "Maria, mi amor, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, then slowly opened. Those beautiful brown eyes I hadn't seen in almost 2 weeks focused on my face. "Mommy?" Her voice was barely a whisper, her throat still damaged from the poison and the choking. I started crying so hard I could barely speak. "Sí, mi niña, I'm here. I'm right here." What happened to me? I had rehearsed this moment 100 times, but now that it was here, I didn't know how to begin. How do you tell your daughter that the man she loved tried to murder her? "You were very sick, mi amor, but you're safe now. Roberto can never hurt you again." Her eyes showed confusion, then slowly horrible understanding. "Roberto? Did Roberto?" "Yes, mi niña, but he's in jail now. He can't hurt you or anyone else ever again." Maria closed her eyes and tears leaked from the corners. I knew something was wrong. I kept getting so sick, but I thought it was stress, or maybe I was going crazy. "You weren't crazy. Roberto was poisoning you slowly for months." "The tea," she whispered. "He always made my evening tea. Said he wanted to take care of me." I squeezed her hand. "You don't have to think about that now. You just need to focus on getting stronger." "Mommy, how did you know? How did you figure it out?" I told her everything. About finding the poison in their kitchen, the insurance policies, the notebook where Roberto documented her slow murder, about Ana and Sofia, about Detective Morales, about how many people had come together to seek justice. "You saved my life," she whispered. "We all saved each other, mi amor." Over the next week, as Maria grew stronger, Ana and Sofia came to visit. These 3 women, united by one man's cruelty, formed a bond that was stronger than family. Ana brought homemade sancocho from her grandmother's recipe. "For healing," she said, setting up a small feast in Maria's hospital room. Sofia brought a wooden cross from Santiago de Compostela in Spain. "I carried this for 3 years, praying for the courage to face Roberto again. Now I want you to have it." Maria was still weak, but her spirit was returning. "Tell me about the trial. I want to testify." "Maria, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. I need to look him in the eyes and tell the world what he did to me. And I need to make sure no other woman goes through this." The trial began 6 weeks later. Roberto had hired expensive lawyers who tried every trick to discredit our evidence. They claimed I had planted the poison. They suggested Maria was mentally unstable. They painted Ana and Sofia as bitter ex-girlfriends seeking revenge. But Detective Morales had built an airtight case. The forensic evidence was overwhelming. Roberto's computer revealed his communications with multiple potential victims. The notebook in his handwriting documented his murder plan in horrifying detail. When Maria took the stand, the courtroom was completely silent. She was still thin, still showing the physical effects of months of poisoning, but her voice was strong and clear. "Roberto told me he loved me more than life itself, but love doesn't come with rat poison. Love doesn't leave bruises on your throat. Love doesn't isolate you from everyone who cares about you." She looked directly at Roberto as she spoke. He couldn't meet her eyes. For months I thought I was going crazy. I was getting sick, losing weight, feeling weak and confused. Roberto convinced me it was stress from work, that I needed to quit my job and let him take care of me. "What changed your perspective?" the prosecutor asked. When I woke up in the hospital and learned my mother had found evidence that Roberto was systematically poisoning me, that's when I realized the man I married was a stranger. Anna testified next, describing the pattern of abuse she'd suffered. Her voice shook at first, but as she continued, she grew stronger. Roberto made me believe I was worthless, that no one else would ever love me. He convinced me that the bruises were my fault, that the poisoning was in my head. Sofia's testimony was devastating. She had flown from Madrid to face her abuser, and her courage inspired everyone in the courtroom. I fled to another continent to escape Roberto, but I never really escaped. For 3 years, I've been looking over my shoulder, afraid he would find me. Today, I take my life back. When I testified, I spoke as both a mother and a woman who had learned that evil often wears a charming mask. Roberto counted on my politeness, my respect for his marriage to my daughter. He counted on me being a quiet, submissive old woman who wouldn't ask uncomfortable questions. What would you say to other families facing similar situations? Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. Don't worry about being rude or intrusive. Being alive is more important than being polite. Roberto's defense tried to paint him as a loving husband whose wife had tried to commit suicide, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. When the verdict was read, Maria grabbed my hand and squeezed tight. Ana started crying. Sofia whispered a prayer in Spanish. Even Detective Morales wiped away tears. Roberto was sentenced to 30 years in prison without possibility of parole. The judge, a woman in her 60s, looked directly at him as she delivered the sentence. Mr. Mendoza, you used love as a weapon to systematically destroy women who trusted you. This court finds your actions premeditated, calculating, and utterly without mercy. You will spend the rest of your productive life in prison, which is more mercy than you showed your victims. As they led Roberto away in chains, he looked at our group one last time. But instead of the fear he used to inspire, I saw something different in his eyes. Defeat. After the trial, we stood on the courthouse steps, 4 women who had started as strangers and become family. What now? Anna asked. Now we heal, Maria said, and we help other women recognize the warning signs before it's too late. Sofia nodded. I'm moving back to Colombia permanently. I want to work with domestic violence organizations. And I said, looking at these brave women who had become my daughters in every way that mattered, I'm going to make sure Roberto's story becomes a warning that saves lives. Justice wasn't just served that day. It was delivered by women who refused to stay silent. God never wastes our pain. He transforms it into purpose. 6 months after the trial, I found myself standing in front of a room full of women at Parroquia San Jose, the same church where I had prayed for Miguel's soul and later for Maria's recovery. But today, I wasn't there to mourn or plead. I was there to teach. Buenos dias, señoras. My name is Carmen Rodriguez, and I'm here to tell you how I almost lost my daughter to a monster who called himself her husband. The women leaned forward in their plastic chairs. Mothers, daughters, grandmothers, wives, all united by the fear that touches every woman's life at some point. Maria sat in the front row, still recovering, but determined to be part of our mission. Beside her were Ana and Sofia, who had become my partners in this new calling. I thought I knew what love looked like, I continued. Roberto brought flowers, opened doors, called me Mama with such affection, but I learned that predators are excellent actors. A young woman in the back raised her hand tentatively. Señora Carmen, how can you tell the difference between a caring man and a controlling one? I had learned to answer this question from painful experience. Mi niña, caring men want you to be happy, even when that happiness doesn't include them. Controlling men want you to be happy only with them. Maria stood up to address the group. Speaking publicly about her trauma was part of her healing process. Ladies, I was an educated woman with a good job and a strong family. I thought abuse only happened to women who were poor or uneducated. Roberto taught me that predators don't discriminate. They just look for women with good hearts. An older woman wiped her eyes. My daughter-in-law has been acting strange lately. She's lost weight, stopped calling. Always has excuses for why she can't visit. I felt my heart clench. Tell me more, Senora. She used to be so vibrant, always laughing. Now she's like a ghost. My son says she's been depressed, but something doesn't feel right. Anna spoke up. That's exactly how I was with Roberto. He convinced everyone I was mentally unstable while he was slowly poisoning me. We spent the next hour teaching these women the warning signs we had learned too late. The isolation tactics, the financial control, the way abusers gradually separate their victims from support systems. But most importantly, I emphasized, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. After our presentation, women approached us privately. A grandmother worried about her granddaughter's boyfriend who seemed too possessive. A mother concerned about her son-in-law's jealousy. A young woman wondering if her novio's behavior was normal or alarming. We listened to each story, offered guidance, and when necessary, connected them with Detective Morales and other resources. That evening, the four of us sat in my apartment sharing arepa con queso and reflecting on our new ministry. Carmen, Sophia said, I never thought trauma could become something beautiful. Pain can be a teacher if we let it, I replied. Roberto tried to destroy us, but instead he created warriors. Maria looked thoughtful. I've been thinking about Patricia. We all grew quiet. Patricia, the woman who didn't survive Roberto's abuse, had become our inspiration and our reminder of what was at stake. I want to contact her family, Maria continued. I want them to know Roberto is paying for what he did to their daughter. Anna nodded. I called Patricia's mother last week. She cried for 20 minutes when I told her Roberto was in prison. What did she say? She said she'd been praying for 2 years that someone would prove Patricia didn't kill herself. She said our case gave her daughter's death meaning. Over the following months, our support group grew. We started meeting weekly, then twice a week. We developed training materials, created warning sign checklists, and built a network of women committed to protecting each other. Detective Morales became our official law enforcement liaison, teaching us how to document evidence and work with police when abuse was suspected. Ladies, what you've created here is revolutionary, she told us during one of our meetings. You're not just helping individual women, you're changing the culture that allows abuse to flourish. But our most important breakthrough came when we received a call from the prosecutor's office. 3 more women had come forward with evidence against Roberto from before he met Maria. How is that possible? I asked. He's already in prison. Senora Rodriguez, your case inspired other victims to speak up. We now have evidence that Roberto's pattern of abuse goes back at least 10 years. These women saw your courage and found their own. One of those women was Patricia's best friend, who had always suspected Roberto was responsible for Patricia's death, but had been too afraid to come forward. With this new evidence, we're reopening Patricia's case. Roberto will likely face additional charges for her murder. When I shared this news with our support group, the room erupted in celebration. Patricia would finally have justice. But our real victory was happening quietly, one family at a time. The grandmother whose daughter-in-law was losing weight. She convinced her son to seek counseling after recognizing the warning signs we'd taught her. The daughter-in-law is now safe and getting help. The mother worried about her son-in-law's jealousy. She organized a family intervention that revealed financial abuse. Her daughter left the marriage and is rebuilding her life, the young woman questioning her boyfriend's behavior. She ended the relationship after realizing his possessiveness wasn't romantic. It was dangerous. 3 lives saved, 3 families protected, 3 futures preserved. Mommy, Maria said one evening as we prepared for another support group meeting, do you ever regret not staying quiet? Your life would have been so much simpler. I thought about the woman I was before Roberto poisoned my daughter. Quiet, polite, minding my own business, trusting that other people's marriages were none of my concern. Mi amor, simple isn't always right. God didn't give me 68 years of life experience to keep it to myself. What do you think Papa would say about all this? I smiled, touching the wedding ring I still wore. Your father always said I was stronger than I knew. I think he's proud that I finally figured it out. As women began arriving for our meeting that evening, I watched Maria greet each one with genuine warmth. The daughter who had nearly died was now helping save others. Anna was training to become a victim advocate. Sofia had opened a shelter for abuse survivors. Detective Morales was implementing our protocols throughout the police department. And I had discovered that the autumn of life could be the season of your greatest purpose. Roberto had tried to steal my daughter's future. Instead, he had awakened an army of women determined to protect each other's daughters. Sometimes God's greatest mercies come disguised as our deepest pain. I thought retirement meant rest. God had different plans. As I sit here today, 2 years after that terrible phone call that changed everything, I'm looking at a letter that arrived this morning. It's from a woman named Isabella in Medellin, thanking me for saving her life. Señora Carmen, she writes, I attended your presentation at Universidad de Antioquia last month. When you described the warning signs of poisoning abuse, I realized my boyfriend had been doing exactly what Roberto did to your daughter. I confronted him and found rat poison hidden in his apartment. I'm alive today because you shared your story. This makes 47 women who have contacted me in the past year to say our message helped them escape dangerous relationships. 47 daughters who will go home to their mothers tonight. 47 futures that Roberto's evil inadvertently helped save. The irony isn't lost on me. A man who tried to destroy women has become the reason more women are protected than ever before. Maria walks into my kitchen as I'm reading Isabella's letter. She's gained back all the weight she lost. Her hair shines again, and most importantly, her laugh has returned. Another letter? She asks, pouring herself coffee from the pot I now make every morning instead of Miguel's single cup. Isabella from Medellin. Her novio was copying Roberto's methods exactly. Maria shakes her head in amazement. How many does that make? 47 confirmed saves. But Detective Morales thinks the number is much higher. She says our training materials are being used by police departments across Colombia now. It's true. What started as a support group in my parish has become a national movement. The Colombian government invited me to speak at their domestic violence prevention conference. Universities request our presentations for their students. Even international organizations have reached out. But the work that means the most to me happens right here in Bogota, in small groups of women who gather to learn how to protect themselves and their families. Mommy, are you ready for today's meeting? Today is special. We're hosting the first reunion of all the women whose lives our story has touched. Isabella drove up from Medellin. Carmen came from Barranquilla, the same Carmen who was corresponding with Roberto online before his arrest. 3 women from Cali, whose relatives recognized abuse patterns after attending our presentations. Anna and Sofia arrive early to help set up. Anna now works full-time as a victim advocate and has saved countless women through her counseling. Sofia runs a shelter that houses 30 women and their children at any given time. Carmen, Sofia says as she arranges chairs in our familiar circle. I have news about Roberto. My heart speeds up. Even though he's been in prison for 2 years, hearing his name still affects me. The prosecutor called yesterday. With Patricia's case reopened and new victims coming forward, Roberto will likely receive an additional life sentence. So he'll never get out? Never. And more importantly, his case is being studied by law enforcement agencies across Latin America. They're using his methods to identify other predators. As women begin arriving for our reunion, I'm struck by how different this gathering feels from that first terrified meeting in the parish hall. These women carry themselves with confidence, strength, purpose. Isabella hugs me tightly. Señora Carmen, I brought photos of my wedding. Your wedding? I met a wonderful man after leaving my abuser. Someone who celebrates my independence instead of trying to control it. We married last month, and I wanted you to see that healing is possible. Carmen from Barranquilla introduces me to her daughter. This is Elena. She's studying law because she wants to prosecute domestic violence cases. A young woman, maybe 25, with determined eyes. Señora Carmen, your story changed my life's direction. I want to be like Detective Morales, helping women seek justice. As we share updates and celebrate victories, I realize something profound has happened. Roberto thought he was taking a life when he poisoned Maria. Instead, He sparked a movement that has saved dozens of lives and will continue saving lives long after I'm gone. Ladies, I addressed the group. When I was your age, I thought women's power came from being quiet, polite, accommodating. I thought our job was to keep peace at any cost. The room is completely silent, hanging on every word. Roberto taught me that sometimes keeping peace means fighting. Sometimes being polite means being dangerous to evil. Sometimes the most loving thing a woman can do is refuse to stay silent. Maria stands up. Mommy has something to announce. I smile at my daughter, who has become my partner in this mission. With the money from our book deal and speaking engagements, we're opening the Patricia Vasquez Center for Domestic Violence Prevention. The room erupts in applause. We've been planning this for months. A comprehensive center offering counseling, legal aid, emergency housing, and most importantly, education to help women recognize danger before it's too late. Patricia didn't survive to see Roberto's justice, but her name will help protect thousands of women. Anna wipes away tears. Patricia would be so proud. As the meeting winds down, women exchange phone numbers, make plans to visit each other, commit to staying connected. This network of survivors has become an extended family, bonded by shared trauma, but united by hope. After everyone leaves, Maria and I sit on my small balcony overlooking Bogota, sharing a quiet moment. Mami, do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't fought for me? I consider the question. You would have died, mi amor. Roberto would have collected your insurance money, moved on to Sofia or Carmen or another innocent woman. Ana would still be living in fear. Detective Morales would still be frustrated by cases she couldn't solve. And you? I would have spent the rest of my life wondering if I could have saved you. Instead, I get to spend it knowing that your suffering prevented other daughters from suffering. As the sun sets over the city, I think about the call that woke me at 2:17 a.m. 2 years ago. The call that shattered my peaceful retirement and thrust me into the fight of my life. If I could go back to that night, knowing everything I know now about the pain that was coming, would I change anything? Not a single thing. Because sometimes God uses our deepest wounds to create our greatest purpose. Sometimes the most terrible moments become the most important moments of our lives. Roberto intended to destroy my family. Instead, he taught me that a Colombian grandmother with nothing but love and determination can be more powerful than any predator. To every woman listening to my story, trust your instincts. Speak up when something feels wrong. Don't worry about being rude or causing drama. Your voice might save a life, maybe even your own. And to the Robertos of the world, we're watching, we're listening, we're teaching each other your methods so we can recognize and stop you. You picked the wrong mothers, daughters, and grandmothers to mess with. We don't stay quiet anymore. Que Dios las bendiga a todas. May God bless you all.